Welcome to the CLB Forge podcast. This is the show to help equip you and your church for mission, ministry, and multiplying disciples. Here are your hosts, Pastor Mike Natal and Dr. Ryan Nilsson.
Hey, welcome to episode 41. We're happy to have you here. Today, we're continuing our Church on Track series where it's just Ryan and I, and we thank you for joining us. We're going to look at ways that you can keep your church on the right track, joining God in his mission, and how to avoid traps that can make you get off track. We're in the middle of our series working through 7 common breakdown areas, and we're just going to quickly recap those 7 areas. Ryan, do you have them on your screen at all or no?
I do.
Look at this. I can read that perfectly. Let me tell you. So number 1 is leadership. Number 2 is my personal favorite one because it reminds me of Transformers, is transformational spirituality. Number 3 is worship. Number 4, which is where we're going to spend our time at today, we're going to be speaking all about evangelism and mission. And spoiler alert, in about a month, we're going to release a podcast speaking more about mission. We had the opportunity to interview Dr. Galen Matthias, actually today, just prior to us recording this podcast, and he does a fantastic job. So we would encourage you to not only listen to this podcast, but then definitely tune in a month when Dr. Galen Matthias, who is the missiologist at the Lutheran Brethren Seminary, one of the professors there, as he shares his viewpoint on mission, and it was a fantastic interview. He did such a great job. Wouldn't you agree, Ryan?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited for us to release that episode. It's going to be a good one.
Yeah, us too. So that's number 4, where we're going to spend our time. We're going to hover around evangelism and mission today. Number 5 is vision, but not the guy who's, from the Marvel movies. This is going to be about something else. Or maybe it's not. Are we going to talk about vision like from the Marvel movies, Ryan, in our next
You just have to wait and find out.
Wait and find out. All right. Number 6, functional strategies. And then number 7 is leading change. And so today, Ryan, why don't you spend a little bit of time taking us through number 4, which is, once again, evangelism and mission.
Yeah, before I do that, I just want to talk to you about something, Mike.
Talk to me or talk to our listeners?
To you, to our listeners, to our viewers. So I have something on the screen here.
Goodness.
I have been waiting to do this since probably episode 2 or 3, and I feel like it's time now. We've had this ongoing debate about what's better, Star Wars or Star Trek. So what's the name of our podcast, Mike?
The CLB Forge podcast.
Yeah, thank you. And on my screen back here, we have a little language work here. The forge in French is La Forge. Okay.
No, that doesn't. No, you got to say it a little bit better than that.
La Forge.
There you go.
Okay. One of the characters on Star Trek: The Next Generation is Lieutenant Commander Geordi LaForge. Therefore, Star Trek is better than Star Wars. I think I've won this entire debate with that right there.
I mean, I don't understand how you did. This just kind of shows that you purposefully picked the Forge for our name because you are an avid Star Trek fan.
It's impossible because this was named after another project that's been cooking that's being run by someone else. So if you need some time,
I mean, I will tell you that he was better in Reading Rainbow. He was better in Reading Rainbow.
You take that back. Reading Rainbow is wonderful. Now you're hurting my feelings.
Yep, pretty much.
All right.
Oh, yeah. Man. So wait, how did they pronounce his name in Star Trek?
LaForge.
LaForge.
I don't know the right way to say that at all. So let's be clear.
Interesting.
I think everyone's figured it out. I don't know how to say that in French. I don't have to explain that to anybody.
So now that you've ostracized me completely and made it so that we don't have that, let's talk about the importance of evangelism and mission.
Perfect. All right. So again, in this series, we're looking at areas that need attention, that need evaluation, and some changes and improvements. And one of the areas that churches need to revisit over and over again is how it's engaging in mission and evangelism. And again, we've got a great episode that's all about mission with Dr. Galen Mathiasen coming out in about a month. It's going to be fantastic. We're taking a slightly different approach to this topic and kind of looking at it more in terms of how your church is engaging in this, and to get a deeper understanding of it, tune back in a month. It's going to be great. So today, though, we're going to talk about six key things that you can do to engage with this subject better. So let me. I'm not in the right spot in my notes here. Hang on a second.
Typical Star Trek fan. Never, ever on top of things. That's okay.
Okay, I'm
We
ready.
still love you anyway.
First thing that I'd like to say is this: if you want to engage in this area in a healthy way, the first thing is a don't. And this is a double negative. So the English major in me is really bothered, but I felt like this is the best way to say this. Don't be a church that doesn't want to grow. That's the first thing that you can do to engage in God's mission and be a part of evangelism in a better way or in a fresher way. Churches in general have, most churches have, their attendance has been flat or in decline for decades. But our culture is not suffering from a lack of interest in spirituality. So while attendance in churches in North America has been largely flatlined, other religions have been growing significantly. Mormons have grown by 27%, Jehovah's Witnesses by 39%, Muslims by 156%, Buddhists by 194%. The church health experts, missiologists, one of the issues they've identified is a lack of interest and engagement in intentional evangelism. There are a couple of writers on the subject, Stetzer and Dodson. These guys point out, I think it's Comeback Churches. This is from Comeback Churches. They point out this: the main reason a church does not grow is that it doesn't want to grow. Most people who regularly attend smaller churches have their concerns about the church getting too big. End quote. So churches often, I think we've talked about this before, churches engage in a level of assimilation and outreach that we call replacement growth. So if a family leaves or someone dies, the churches will generally tend to grow just enough to replace the people who have left. But a lot of times churches do not want to get bigger. They don't want to change. They like the way things are. If people are going to become a part of the church, that those people are expected to change to the way the church does things. And this is a mindset that really gets in the way of being a part of mission and evangelism. Any thoughts on this one, Mike?
Yeah, I think that that there's a lot of factors, even subliminally, that people aren't consciously thinking about. Because like when push comes to shove, if you ask a person, they're like, oh no, it's important to evangelize. It's important to tell people about Christ. And a part of that in response is inviting people to church and inviting them to become a part of your community. And so what's really interesting about this is that I think that this idea of don't be a church that doesn't want to grow is something that may be creeping into people's minds without them really realizing it. So what are some tactics, Ryan, that you think that churches can use in order to not have this mindset kind of creep in?
Yeah, the good news is that the rest of the points we're going to talk about today will cover that. And yet, actually, before we go on, too, I really should talk about a couple of terms that we're using. So today we're talking about evangelism and mission.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just define them real quick. So mission is God's saving activity in the world. It's his sending of Jesus Christ to die on the cross for our sins. It is his redemptive work, his rescue of us, his righting what is wrong, his redemption of the world, his ultimately bringing justice and mercy. It's all those things. And God calls us to join him in his mission, to share the good news about the transformational work of Jesus Christ, the gospel, with the world. And evangelism, in that conversation we just had with Dr. Matthiasen, he just wonderfully describes evangelism as a part of missions. So mission is God's saving activity in the world. Missions are the things that we do as we join God in his mission. And evangelism is a part of missions. And that is specifically sharing the transformational gospel with people. And these are things that can be very intimidating, or they feel very intimidating, or we compartmentalize them and we make them like, oh, mission is this kind of optional side project that if you want to do it, if you have time or energy, we can get into it. But really, it's a core part of who we are as the church. It's central to our identity and purpose as the church. And when we sideline it as a little side hobby, oftentimes we'll get into trouble. And so it's important to assess how important is it that we're joining in God's mission. How are we engaging in any kind of evangelism, and to take steps to be intentionally involved in those things.
And I would even go one step further too. Not only how are we doing it, but how are we encouraging other people to come alongside us while we're doing it too? That's another important thing also to realize, like, as a leader in your church, if you can get away with it, don't ever do something by yourself. Do it with another person. Even something simple, doing it in community, which can just be two people, is something that is very important. And I think that this goes really well with your next point, which is make the community a priority.
Yeah. So something that you can do. So, we've got, I think 6 points today. These last 5 really are positive things that you can do to help your church be intentional about its engagement in mission and evangelism. So, number 2, make the community a priority. Help your congregation prioritize the needs of the community over the needs of the members of the church. A lot of times our churches are focused very much on the people who are already a part of the congregation. The church has programs and ministries geared to serve those people. The music, the studies, the teaching is all geared to their preferences and their needs. But we often forget about engaging in ministry that serves the broader community, that serves the people who aren't yet a part of our church. So this is a great, huge thing to start to think about. A lot of times people think outreach is, well, our doors are open, our worship time is on the sign, that's enough. But that does nothing to engage with the community around you. It does nothing to make them a priority. And it doesn't say that the community is important to you. But this community is where God has placed you and your church to serve. This is where God has called you to serve, where God has called you to join him in his mission. And so...
And God has called us to be the missionary. A sign outside is essentially inviting people into the church, which makes them the missionary.
Yeah.
Like, that's the important thing to realize is, like, any time where you're like, come to our church, you have essentially made that individual into the missionary. They're entering uncharted territory, as opposed to bringing the mission to them in community.
Yeah.
Which is important.
Yeah. Yeah. And if we're just saying, well, mission is only when we send missionaries to other countries or across an ocean, man, we're missing a big part of the mission that God has called us to. God has called us to be missionaries in our local community. And if we choose to say, well, there's a church down the road that's doing that, so we'll let them do that. I mean, we're not obeying our call as disciples. There's a great church health writer named Gary McIntosh, and he says this: revitalization happens as ministry emphasis shifts from members of the church to people in the community. So if you want things to turn around in your church, if you feel like, man, things are not headed in a healthy direction, one of the great ways that you can make a change about that is to shift your focus and attention away from the needs of the members who are gathered and already integrated into the church to putting more attention on people in the community. That makes a big difference.
Absolutely.
Now, I think oftentimes we think about our community as this place where people understand what the church is about. They understand who Jesus is and the gospel is. We really need to think of our churches as missionary outposts and the people in the community around us as people who, yes, they might speak English, but they speak a different language than us in terms of our spiritual language, our Christian theology. These are all concepts that may be new and different and foreign, and we need to learn how to speak the gospel in a way that those people can understand. Chances are they're not going to... Yeah.
I was going to say, you talk about a mission outpost, and before Ryan got super power hungry with the whole Star Trek LaForge thing, we were actually kicking around the idea of calling this podcast the Mission Outpost. So it's interesting that you kind of bring that up. So
I don't like how you redact history there, though. Like, actually, I really like the name The Mission Outpost. That's probably me too. My favorite name.
Me too.
And we named it the Forge to. I said to tie into another project that's cooking. Anyway, Mike and I are part of a coaching cohort, and we heard somebody talking about this a few weeks ago. How oftentimes we expect people to come to church on our terms. If you want to find out about God, you come to us at the time we set. We do worship in a way we like and understand. We talk about the gospel in a way we like and understand. And we expect you to do all that translating work. We expect you to cross the cultural barriers to come to us and figure it all out. And, this guy we heard talking said, we are expecting people who don't yet know Christ to be missionaries to us. We're expecting them to cross over all these boundaries to us. And really, God is calling us to do that, to cross the cultural boundaries that are right in our own communities, to get to know the people in our communities, their needs, what's important to them, what they're worried about, what their fears are, what gives them hope, and to help learn how we can communicate the gospel in a way that they can understand and hear and listen. And that's going to transform the way our church looks and functions and operates. And often that can be very threatening. And many times we like things to stay the way they are, but oftentimes the way things are, they are designed to ignore the community or to not place enough importance on what people need to hear and how they're going to hear the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Number 3, provide planned church-wide evangelism opportunities. Okay, so this is something else you can do to help your church engage in evangelism and mission in a new way. And that is kind of across your whole church, your whole organization, that you're going to do certain things that help people engage in spiritual conversations, that help people invite others to your special events and services, that help people share the gospel. And so we do that through sermons, through teaching and training and how to have spiritual conversations. Actually, by the time this episode airs, we'll have done a webinar about having spiritual conversations with people. So we'll put a link to that in the show notes. It's going to be great. Hasn't happened yet as of the recording, but by the time this comes out, it'll be done and available. Use the big days in your church calendar to invite people to your church, to engage with them in special activities. So Christmas and Easter, those are times, sometimes the fall, those are times when people are more open to connecting with your church community. And you can break down the steps that are involved in inviting people so that people in your church have an easier time of, extending personal invitations. So that you've got invite cards and postcards that go out, and you coach people on praying for someone they should invite, and then you coach them and help them in figuring out how they can personally invite somebody. Maybe it's inviting somebody to a worship service. Maybe it's inviting somebody over to a backyard picnic. Maybe it's inviting somebody to a small group. Those are all ways that as a church together, you provide these organization-wide opportunities for evangelism. Mobilizing your church to engage and serve in the community, to go out into the community and do something to benefit and bless the community is a huge thing. Tasking your small groups, asking them or requiring them, challenging them to have a missional focus, your small groups. So to tell your small groups, hey, once a quarter, we challenge you once a quarter to do something to be a blessing to someone in your neighborhood or some group in the community. Do something so that you are leaving where your meeting place and you are going out and rubbing shoulders with people in the community and being a blessing in a way that people can see and understand and relate to.
Yeah, and I would also encourage people too, as we're looking at this providing a planned church-wide evangelism opportunity, also to lend it to some sort of like have it be a regular occurrence. Don't give up after one try. In terms of so one of the things for our church personally, we do a starting the summer carnival at like the end of spring going into the summer. And when we first started it, we got decent people. It was mainly just word of mouth. But then the next year we gained more people, and the following year we gained more people. And so actually this last time, unfortunately, this last time there was COVID, but the time before that, something that was really, really cool was it gained such community outreach and exposure that we literally had organizations calling us asking if they could come and help. For instance, like there was a Girl Scout troop who said, hey, could we come and staff the games that you have for your carnival? Could we come and be a part of this? So, and I was like, this is tremendous. And so I would encourage people that if you're planning something like an evangelism opportunity, don't give up after one time. If it was a flop, give it at least 1 year. And I even feel that for like VBS too. Like our VBS, we've been doing it since I've been here as the pastor for 6 years. And I feel like after about 5 years, we finally hit traction where people were consciously saying, okay, when is the VBS? Is it always going to be the first week in August? And we said, yep, it's always going to consistently stay. So as you're looking for these opportunities too, think about consistency and longevity as well with it.
Great point. I agree. Last church I served, we did a community service day, and first year or two, there were a lot of skeptics in the church. By year 3 and 4, there was a lot more people had seen the value of it, the potential for it. We would go out into groups and serve in the community, and we also began to develop a reputation in the community. Like I think a lot of churches are seen as very self-serving. Like you guys 100%. You guys are just about yourselves, and you just want money for yourselves. That's a common secular perception of the church. And when you start serving others in the community, and it's clear you're not getting something out of it, that you really do want to be a blessing, and you really do care, and you want the community to prosper and do well, that builds a lot of trust and relationship with the community. All right. Number 4, facilitate and encourage personal evangelism and personal mission engagement. So you want to provide all these organizational approaches, these church-wide approaches, but you also want to encourage people to be engaged personally. And actually during COVID, this is especially important. It's probably more important than it has been in a very long time. This is kind of one of the only ways that we have right now to engage in evangelism is personal one-on-one conversations in our neighborhoods, spiritual conversations with people we meet in our communities. There's different kinds of activities that we can engage in this way. Praying. If you start regularly praying for people in your community who may not know Christ, you're gonna find yourself having different kinds of conversations. God's gonna grow a heart for them in your heart. I'm just gonna show you a little little tool here. This is one of the prayer tools I learned. I don't know if you guys can see this or not, but I just drew like a tic-tac-toe thing.
Let's do it.
So this is something you could do even in the middle of a sermon. You want to encourage people to pray. You could say, hey, draw a tic-tac-toe in this little empty space on the bulletin and put a name in each of these boxes. And, pray for these 9 people that may not know Christ. And pray that God will give you an opportunity to be a blessing to them. So if you just throw around the word evangelism, it's very intimidating. People think like, oh man, I've got to like have this like major confrontational conversation with somebody and like argue them into the kingdom of God. And that's not how, what is that? That's,
argue them into the kingdom of God. I love that.
I mean, that's not how it goes. We don't do any of the saving. Never.
Yeah.
God is the one who saves. So we don't.
Yep.
But he does call us to be evangelistic Christians, to spread the gospel. We are told to do that. And we leave the saving to God. He calls us to be sharing and proclaiming the gospel. So you can do that by praying for people. You can make it easy for people to bring others to services, to community events that you're hosting or serving at. Help people to be inviters of others. Somebody may not be.
So after people finish up their tic-tac-toe board, if they win tic-tac-toe, do they get a prize from the church? Do they scream bingo really, really loud?
Sure. Some
Sweet.
churches will. Yeah. Anyway, here's a great way to take praying and translate it into something more. So we did this. I picked this up from I forget where, a book or seminar or something like that. So this is something we did. One week we did a series leading up to Easter, right? So we had 1 week. One of our emphasis was to identify someone to pray for, and so we just said, "Hey, here's some Post-it notes. Write down the name of somebody in your life that may not know God, and stick it up on the wall." So we had a wall covered with hundreds of names of people. The next Sunday, we said, "Hey, go and take a couple of those names down. Not the ones you put up, but take someone else's." So then we told people, so not only are you praying for these people, but someone else in the church is praying for you and this person as well. And then the third week, we told them, hey, you're praying for these people. Someone else in the church is praying for these people. The leaders of the church are praying for you and for these people. Now, go and invite them to join you for Easter worship, or invite them to come to the community event that you're having. So you kind of breaking it down step by step, and that's a lot more manageable than saying to someone, "You shall make this person a Christian with your wit and articulate words."
Nice.
Okay. Listening. So few people in our world can know how to listen. I think a part of personal evangelism, personal relationship building is being a good listener. Seek to understand the other person and their spiritual beliefs, their worldview, and worry less about explaining giving them an in-depth lecture on your beliefs. Listening goes such a long way. And so many of us are so bad at listening. Oftentimes when we're listening, we're just thinking about the next thing we're going to say. And if you ask some genuine questions and show a genuine interest, you're going to open the doors to some really powerful conversations. I also recommend you have a welcome ministry and an assimilation strategy so that you're ready to welcome people. If you do have these events and people start attending, you need to be ready to welcome them and help connect them into the church. And we can get into that. That's kind of another topic.
I mean, I think that you covered it, and it was good, to facilitate people personally doing the work of evangelism, but also at the same time, as a leader, giving them simple practical applications in which evangelism isn't something overwhelming, which sometimes for people, the way that they view evangelism is like, I don't even know where to start, so therefore I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
And so as a church leader, giving small, accessible goals and tactics are incredibly important when it comes to evangelism. It's not like go out and argue someone, like you said. I love that phrase, argue someone into the kingdom of God, but literally like spend 2 minutes a day praying for that individual. 2 minutes a day. That's it.
So powerful.
And then see how God leads you to actually talk to that individual.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So
That's good.
I think that's great. That's really good.
All right. Number 5, model a missional mindset. So this is actually
see what you did here, right? You see what you did here, right? For number 5, you see it, don't you?
Oh, I did alliteration. Oh no.
Love it. See, I'm going to remember number 5.
You're welcome.
So well. For those of you who don't remember, this harkens all the way back to like episode 1, where Ryan's like, I don't like alliteration at all. And now any chance that he uses alliteration, I point it out. So here it is. We're on episode 41, and not only LaForge with the Star Trek thing, but now here is a blunder of a perfect alliteration. So good job.
Yeah. All right. So model a missional mindset. So this does get back to something you were saying earlier, Mike, about how it's important for us as leaders to model behavior for the congregation. So if you're a pastor, you need to be having the kinds of spiritual conversations that you want people in the church to have. You need to be finding ways to serve in the community. Leaders, a great rule of thumb, especially if you're a pastor, pastors should spend their time with leaders and the lost. So if you're a pastor, I think a good rule of thumb is to make sure that you are giving ample time to invest in and support ministry leaders in your church, but also people who don't yet know Christ or who are new to the faith. So that kind of leaders in the lost. That lost refers to, really, I would say, people who are young in their faith, or people who are interested in having spiritual conversations, people that you're meeting in the community. As a pastor, you should spend time with those people. And you should make mention in your sermons that, as appropriate, when it makes sense with the message, mention that you intentionally are spending time. You're doing things as a family so that you rub shoulders with people in the community. You model that behavior for others so that others can copy you and follow your example, because they're going to follow your example. And doesn't matter what you say, it matters more what you do. They're going to copy what you do. And if what you do doesn't match up with what you say, you're kind of working against yourself there. So ministry leaders, elders, I would say the same as well, that you want to model a missional mindset, that you want to model this behavior for others. So these other principles we've been talking about, engage in them in your own life. And like you said, Mike, take someone along. Or, like if you're out at a restaurant and you ask your waiter, hey, we're going to be praying for our meal later. Do you have is there anything I can pray for you about? When we do that, like, that could be a little uncomfortable. But maybe the moment's right. And you're able to say that in a way that's clear. Like, okay, this guy's not trying to corner me. He just wants to be a blessing.
Yep.
If you've got someone with you, you're showing them how to do that. And that's pretty
one
powerful.
Of the things that I try to intentionally do is I've oftentimes noticed people say, if you're in a conversation and somebody shares with you like a prayer need or something along those lines, I've often noticed people say, "Oh, I'll pray for you," which is great. That's super encouraging. But like, how long would it take you to literally just on the spot right there say a quick prayer?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so like that's one of the things that I've tried to model is if you're going to tell a person that you're praying for them, why not just pray with them really quick?
Yeah, you can do that too. Absolutely. You don't have to, but yeah, if you're comfortable doing it, go for it.
Yeah.
Like prayer walks in your community can be a really powerful thing too. Like, if you're a business owner, wouldn't you like it if a group of 3 or 4 people came in your shop and said, "Hey, we're walking through the community. We're praying for the blessing and success and prosperity of this town. Is there anything we can pray for you about? That I think a lot more people than we think are open to that and would really be touched by that. Last point here is to plan for intentional mission engagement. So this kind of ties it all in. So these points we've talked about are great. Like, they're really important. Fighting that urge to stay the same and be the same and not have anybody new. Making the community a priority in your ministry. Provide planned church-wide evangelism opportunities. Facilitating and encouraging personal evangelism. Championing that. Modeling this mindset for people. They're each influential, but they really have power when you do them all in tandem. And a lot of times maybe we'll do one or the other. So I want to encourage you really to take some small steps in each of those areas, in each of those five themes we talked about. And the sixth point really provides you a way to do that, to tie it all together. So have an evangelism strategy or a mission strategy for your church. Make a plan. Develop a strategy so that it's kept intentionally in front of your church. So your plan, it might be a one-page written document that says, hey, this year, over the next 12 months, we're going to have, one event where we invite people from the community onto our property for a fun, not for a worship service, but for some kind of fun community day. Twice this year, we're going to have projects that we do in the community off our church property. We want to make it a goal that 30 people in our church have somebody from their neighborhood over for dinner at their homes. We want to have 2 small groups that serve the community at least once this year, right? So you set these kinds of goals and start working towards them. We're going to have a sermon series or a training about spiritual conversations. Incorporate those kinds of things into a plan. Put it in writing. It just makes it a lot easier for you to actually work towards accomplishing that. You may not carry out everything in your plan, but you probably will accomplish a lot more than if you had never written it down or set these things as goals or objectives. And it makes it so that everyone can see where you're going and why you're doing it. And it can have a transformational effect on the church.
Solid. So so let's recap really quick.
Yeah.
So 7 areas for common breakdown areas. We're in the middle of those 7. And today we specifically talked about evangelism and mission, and that can be broken down into 6 different categories. And so we talk through, don't be a church that doesn't want to grow. And then we talk through what are some tactics that can be used. So we talked about making the community a priority. We talked about providing planned church-wide evangelism opportunities, facilitate and encourage personal evangelism, model a missional mindset. One of my personal favorites that I'll never forget, model a missional mindset, all those M's in a row. M is obviously the best letter to alliterate to, because all cool names begin with the letter M. Plan, and then the last one is plan for intentional missional engagement. And so hopefully we gave you you guys some stuff to think about, maybe share, pass on with others, things that you can adopt into your current ministry opportunities. And also don't forget that in a month, we'd love to have you come back and listen to the podcast with Dr. Galen Mathiasen, all focused around mission. One of the things that he said that has stuck with me through seminary is that mission is not a have to, but a get to. And he's going to talk about that in the podcast. And I'm so happy that he brought that up, because that was one of the things that really changed my viewpoint on mission, was when he told me it's not a have to. You don't have to do mission.
Yeah.
You get to be a part of God's mission. And I was like, yep, that's it. That's the great thing. So thank you, Ryan, for sharing your insight. Go ahead. Yeah.
Before you close this out here, I've got some resources that I want to share with you guys. A few books that have impacted my ministry, my thinking over the years. So one is called Comeback Churches by Ed Stetzer and Mike Dodson. I quoted them earlier today. It's a great book about if you're feeling like your church is stuck or in a rut and needs to make changes. This book talks about how churches have done that successfully. So it's based on research and gives you some great principles that you can apply in your own church setting, including the development of an evangelism strategy. Another book called Ignite by Nelson Searcy. This book, he really gets into how to take a day like Easter or Christmas and plan and mobilize people around that to, invite and bring people and engage with people in the community. A great book about having spiritual conversations is called Tactics by Gregory Koukl. I'm not sure how you say that. Great book about hospitality. The Gospel Comes with a House Key by Rosaria Butterfield. So that's a great one about, your home as a place of hospitality. And then another one called Holy Conversations. Again, about the subtitle here is Talking About God in Everyday Life by Richard Peace. So, there's so many. Those are just a few that kind of give you a chance to dip your toes in some of these different topics that we were discussing today.
Very cool.
And
Ryan,
any of those would be like if you're a small group leader, like to go through one of those books and apply what you're reading and learning about together as a group, like that's just a powerful way to go about it.
Or even if you're an elder board too, that reads books in tandem with each other and then talks about it before the meeting starts. Those would be great books to incorporate, which would be tremendous. So, all right, Ryan, can I do a little outro?
Please.
All right, cool. So thanks, Ryan, for sharing your insight. As usual, I know that these breakdown sessions are an encouragement to a lot of people who listen to them, and they enjoy your insight. And so thank you, Ryan, for taking time to plan talking through these and making these accessible for people. Thank you to our listeners for tuning into the show today. And don't forget to subscribe to our show as well. Hit the like button so that you can know when the next podcast or YouTube drops. We've been trying to consistently stay on Tuesdays, and so we hope that has been beneficial for you to have some continuity as we go through it. But if you could like and subscribe and even share with a friend or a colleague, that would be greatly appreciated. And so we hope that you have a great rest of your day, and thank you for tuning in. See you guys next time.
See you guys.
This has been an episode of the CLB Forge podcast with Pastor Mike Natal and Dr. Ryan Nilsson. Thanks for listening. We welcome your questions and comments. Email us at podcast@clbforge.org.